Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition in the Export to Japan podcast series. And today we're going to have a wonderful discussion with a lovely lady, Alex Hughes of Rutherford of England, who has got a fascinating story to tell us about her success and her company's success going into the Japanese market. And we've got Alex here joining us. Hi, Alex. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Steve.
It's
nice
lovely to have you here with us. Yeah, thank you. And wonderful to have you. And we can see you sitting there, and actually I can notice some of your wonderful satchels up on that cabinet behind you, and what amazing products they are, and just a little glimpse at those. And I can see why you've been so hugely successful in the Japanese market, and looking forward to chatting to you more about that in a moment and learning more about it. Before I dive in with Alex. Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. It's a pleasure. Before I dive in with Alex, I just want to say to everybody here, if you would be so kind to hit that subscribe button. We've got a whole bunch of podcasts lined up in this current series. And if you subscribe, you'll get notifications of the upcoming podcasts. And secondly, if you enjoy this content that we're putting together, if you could hit that like button as well, that would be much appreciated. So, Alex, over to you. I'd love to start by just learning a little bit more about what was that initial trigger point that got you and Rutherford's aware of the Japanese market, or even interested in the Japanese market.
The initial journey, the start of the journey, was health problems. And by way of recovery, I wanted to do something that was going to be creative, take me outside of my mindset. So through a very good friend of mine, I was able to acquire the old patterns and designs of a company in Chester that used to manufacture items out of English bridle leather for a vast number of brands, but predominantly for the Japanese market. And they closed in 1998. And I'm going back to 2012 when my journey started. So having acquired the equipment and various machines, having no knowledge of bridal work or leather work, I decided that it was worth having a look at least at what I'd purchased. And when I started opening the container, the hair on the back of my neck started standing up. And I realized there was something special there. But I had no knowledge. So in order to acquire the knowledge, I had to spend a whole year of traipsing around various makers in the UK, YouTube videos, various other courses to gain the knowledge. And once I'd done that, I'd also, in the meantime, been very lucky to come across the only employment record in that container, and that was fateful, of one individual, Graham, who used to work for Shuttleworths. I contacted him. He agreed to come and join me for a year and help me. And he came back to old friends. And it was amazing. He's the one who really started me on that journey. And once I realized the Shuttleworths were the main manufacturer of English bridal leather luggage, and they supplied department stores like Lloyd's of Tokyo. They made products for churches, the briefcases, and the such like. Initially started as a hobby to help me recover, but thereafter I'd purchased some leather. People had seen me coming. I had no knowledge. I'd bought some leather which wasn't the quality that it should have been. And Graham said, look, let's get our money back. Made some music cases. We put them on eBay. And somebody in Japan bought a lot of them. And this was in the May 2012. And in the October, I got an amazing phone call from these wonderful gentlemen from Japan. And that really was the start of the journey. So really, it was the acquisition of the container of items and what came out of it. And it was nothing ventured, nothing gained. So, hey ho, the phone call was
amazing.
fortuitous.
what what an incredible story as a start point. How you bought this container and then slowly unraveled what you'd got, and then found that employment record and found that gentleman and got him on board. And what a great story. And then via eBay, right? You made some products, you put them on eBay, and then they were suddenly being bought by Japan. Then you got this phone call. So so tell us a bit more about the phone call. What happened? Who was it who called you, and what was the next step in that conversation?
I'd been out purchasing some threads, and I got back to my original workshop, which was at a farm locally. A friend had converted a barn for me, never believing for 1 minute that this would become a business. It was purely a hobby. I'd been out. I got back about 5 o'clock, and one of the girls that I'd got with me had said a phone call had arrived from Japan. They weren't sure whether he was serious. It was a gentleman, extremely well-spoken, perfect English, had said, doesn't matter what time she gets in, just ask her to call us. 5 o'clock, 9-hour difference. I thought, this has got to be a joke. But again, I had nothing to lose. So I picked up the phone, and that was it. 3 hours later, I felt like I'd been talking to old friends. The conversation ended with, give us 10 minutes, we will call you back. They called back and said, so this was October the 31st, 2012. They said, can you come and pick us up at Chester Station on November the 3rd? I thought, right. So yes, of course, I'll do that. But then I asked them how I would recognize them. And they said, well, we're little and large, a tall Japanese gentleman and a short Japanese gentleman. And I said, well, I'm the short Indian woman who'll be there. So I turned up, standing there, and these two amazingly dressed Japanese guys walking out of Chester into the concourse of Chester Station. And they saw me and they started waving. And I took them back to the farm. And honestly, I can genuinely tell you that it was like I'd known them forever.
Wow. Wow.
It was that connection that had happened, which I just couldn't, I couldn't make head or tail of it, but it was absolutely beautiful. And I knew that I could trust them. So
Really?
They came to my little workshop, they met Graham, and they were absolutely blown away. In fact, the incredible Mr. Nakagawa, who owns Union Works, said that he'd instantly recognized the quality of the music cases that we'd put on eBay because they'd been made by Graham, who used to be one of Shuttleworth's makers, and the product used to go to Lloyd's of Tokyo. So he then contacted the manager of Lloyd's of Tokyo, and they genuinely thought that they were Shuttleworth's products. And that's how I started. And when he came to the UK, took him to the farm. It's an equestrian farm. So he was dressed, oh golly, so beautifully. But, and he just went wandering around the farm. We found him in the stables. I then took him upstairs and he said, look, I'll buy whatever you've got. And we had a conversation and he said, I'll become your distributor.
Wow.
And that was it.
And this was, I just want to really crystallize and check one point here, because this is such a fascinating story. So you mentioned you had the products on eBay, the purchases started coming from Japan. You then got that phone call. And that phone call, you said, was towards the end of October. And then by November, they were coming, early November, they were coming over to visit you. That quick, literally. 3
days.
Wow.
From the date, from the 31st of October was the phone call. And I picked them up from Chester Station on the 3rd of November.
That's incredible.
What I failed to recognize, and that was because of my lack of experience in the industry and my lack of knowledge of the English bridal leather goods, that English bridal leather goods handmade in England and the quality side of it are really, really revered in Japan. And that was something that I've learned over the years through Mr. Nakagawa and Union Works. So that's how the journey started.
And I can imagine the impression you must have got from that interaction. First of all, the 3-hour phone call, and you said that you felt like you'd known each other, for a long time, and that's an amazing initial phone call. And then the commitment from their side, Mr. Nakagawa and his colleague, to come over within a few
yeah.
days and meet you? And I mean, in terms of sort of you developing trust to work with them and realize that there could be a great opportunity for yourself and for their company, you know, how did that feel? Did you instantly feel that recognition, or did it take a little bit of time to build that trust? What was your feeling on that?
Honestly, having met them, and I think you've hit the nail on the head, what was critical for me was that they were willing to fly out. I suspect not just to see me, but because Mr. Nakagawa had other suppliers in the UK, but the fact that they were willing to make that journey to Cheshire from London meant a lot. And I think that told me a lot about them as individuals as well, that they believed in what they were doing, they believed in what they'd seen, they believed in the quality, and just possibly, I had my fingers and toes crossed, they might believe in me.
Wow.
And my passion. And I can tell you, you cut me open and you will have English bridle running through my veins.
Wow. Yeah.
I adore what I do. And I think that passion not only came through from me, but from Graham, but you could sense it from Mr. Nakagawa.
Yes.
And Mr. Hinoishi.
Yeah.
He was just amazing, you know. And I can't tell you, people must think, oh, you know, she's perhaps over exaggerating. I'm not. Talking to you now, Steve, it's giving me goosebumps.
Wow.
Because that memory comes back, and it's an abiding memory.
Yeah. Isn't that
And
powerful?
the fact that this chap was willing to come over, knowing my journey, that I was a newbie, he took me by the hand and then said, you know, I'll guide you through this journey.
Wow.
And I thought, brilliant. I've got nothing to lose, but everything to gain.
Yeah.
And
That's
I think
amazing.
it helped
How powerful.
that I had no previous experience or knowledge of the leather industry. Because had I had that, perhaps I would have been less trusting.
Right.
But
interesting.
having met them, I just knew.
Yeah.
And since then, it's been an amazing journey. Listen, it's not been all sort of, you know, sweetness and light. It's been tough.
Yeah.
But if you believe in something and you believe in what you want to achieve, and you have that vision, and you've got to keep that vision in mind, and don't allow anybody to allow you to deviate from that.
Sure.
You listen to people. You don't say to yourself that, oh, I'm the best, I know what I'm doing. You're always learning.
Yeah.
You're always learning.
Yeah, that little bit of having a humble character of, as you say, listening and learning and taking information in is such a valuable ingredient. I mean, in life as well as in business, but in particular for the nature of, you know, what we're talking about for this podcast, with developing those relationships with your Japanese partners, it's such a crucial ingredient, isn't it, to be able to do that.
If there's one thing that I can say, and one thing that, you know, it always goes back to, I had the most amazing grandfather. Colonial India, sent over by the British to East Africa to help build the railways because he was a carpenter. And he died at the age of 97 in the UK. He spent 60 years in Nairobi. We're all from East Africa. And when my first daughter was born, he came to see me. And he was in his 80s. And I remember sitting there with him, and he held her and he said, do you know what? He said, a princess has come into this world today.
Wow.
He said, and she will take you places. He said, but one thing, never forget where you've come from. And in that moment, I knew, you know, that you can never, ever believe your own publicity. You're never too important.
Yeah.
You know, you
Absolutely.
have got to, with the supply, if your partners in Japan or whichever export environment you're in, never view them as people who are just going to earn you the money.
Sure.
Make them your friends.
Yes.
And they should be your friends because they're the ones, it's because of them, you know, that I'm in Japan and in other environments. So make them your friends in the first instance.
It's great advice, Alex, and clearly you've learned that and practiced that over the last 10 years. It's very, very, very clear, and hence one of the great reasons for your success there. So if we go back to that point where Mr. Nakagawa and his colleague came over, you had this great interaction with him, you clearly had a good feeling and trust was being established. you also mentioned there that it hasn't all been, one amazing journey. I'm sure there's been ups and downs, as there always is for anyone in any business environment. But could you talk us through a little bit of what happened next? How long from that discussion in November when he came to visit, roughly how long was it before your two companies signed up any form of agreement? When did you start shipping product? Has it been a steady increase all the way? Has there been bumps in the road? Tell us a little bit about your journey into Japan over those last 10 years, please.
We have no written agreement in place.
Wow. Okay.
It's a handshake and a hug, and belief in each other, and trust in each other. And that's about being transparent with them. Where there are problems, you let them know there are problems. We had issues with bridal leather where we couldn't deliver for a year. We started delivering immediately. He went back and he placed an order. That's the level of trust that we developed when he came here. And that's not to say, that it's all rosy. No, I mean, I've sent stuff over where I trusted other people's judgment within the workshop, and I didn't inspect the product. It got to Japan. It wasn't the quality it should have been. He sent it back. And then he actually came over and gave me a telling off, and rightly so. And I had to accept that, and that's how you learn.
Yeah.
Because they know their market. I don't.
Yeah.
They know the people. The cultural aspect, the appreciation and the understanding of the culture is so, so important, because everything is based on integrity there. And it should be everywhere,
Yes.
And within the workshop, we have young girls. And the primary mantra is that, yes, we've got these wonderful people who are helping us, distribute and spread the word and expand and really sort of, get the brand entrenched. They make the whole business tick in that they sell, the money comes in, but they're more than that. They're not just people who pay your invoices. They're the people who are going to take you and lead you through that. It's a difficult journey. And any preconceived notions you may have about what the Japanese market or the American market is like, forget it, park it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've given us a great example there, and it's a good one for me to touch on, because I know from my experience with other companies we talk to, this question of the quality of the product comes up, and we know on the Japanese side, they have high expectations and high thresholds to meet, and that's a wonderful thing. So, but when you get that feedback to say, hey, this particular product, there's something, the quality is not quite there for whatever reason, whatever it may be, something to do with the manufacturing or the quality of the materials or whatever it may be, that can often be a really difficult situation in a relationship, right? Both ways. So you gave an example that's happened with you. How have you maintained a good relationship when you've got that feedback? What would be your tips for other UK companies that are going through that journey with how to handle that when they get that feedback?
Understand what the feedback is in the first instance, and accept it's your fault. You may not think it's your fault. You may not believe it's your fault. But again, I go back to the quality side of it and the market. They know what the quality is required, and they know what the market requires, what the customer requires. I'm sitting thousands of miles away. I don't know what the customer's requirements are. He does. So if it means that you have to take a bit of a battering, so be it. This is an ego. This isn't about our egos. And I think sometimes people allow their egos to come to the forefront.
Yes.
And if you believe in what it is that you want to deliver, you believe in your vision, you have that passion, then really ego has no room in it.
Yeah, very good. That's great advice. Okay,
really
I have another question I want to ask you during your journey, Alex, over the last 10 years in Japan. You've clearly got this amazing relationship with Union Works and Mr. Nakagawa, and it's built hugely on so much trust. You even said that there's not really a written agreement. You guys don't need that because there's so much trust between you, which is wonderful. Have you, as your products and your brand have become, more and more known in Japan, and you've got more end user customers out there buying the products and things, have you ever had situations where other potential distributors or agents or even sort of end user stores or anything like that have approached you and tried to buy from you and work? Could you talk us through any examples like that, please?
Yeah. Oh, golly. I've had 2 department stores contacted me directly. And I was very clear that I have a distributor in Japan and I will not go outside of that relationship. Loyalty is fundamental to this particular relationship. I could have. Isitan, they have loads of stores out in Tokyo, or Japan generally, and then Beams. But no, I was adamant and I would not go behind Mr. Nakagawa. If Mr. presented the proposition to Mr. Nakagawa, explained to Isitan, that's who you have to contact if you want our products. And I was told it'd be too expensive. So, well, that's hey ho, so be it. But I will not go behind. And Beams is another one. They contacted us through Instagram. And similarly, I passed the contact details at Union Works to the gentleman, and he very kindly contacted Union Works. And yes, we are now supplying into Beams, courtesy of Union Works.
Wonderful, wonderful. So that, to me, that is such an essential point you've brought out there, because it can be so tempting for any of us running, bringing startup businesses off the ground. And all credit to you when you first bought that container. You didn't know what you were getting, and you invested and you took the risk, and you've worked hard to build your business up. And of course, it can be very tempting to, if a nice juicy carrot is dangled in front of you from a bigger player that suddenly shows an interest, it can be so tempting to try and grab that. But you resisted that temptation and you stuck with the loyalty to your partner. And that is so powerful, to not take that quick win and to look at the longer picture. And I'm sure all that has done is proved to strengthen the relationship between you and Union Works and Mr. Nakagawa, because he will obviously respect that hugely too, that you've returned that loyalty to him, and that will come back to you in droves. So that's a wonderful example to me of a great way to behave in any business market, but I think in particular in Japan, where kind of loyalty and long-term views and commitment is so strong. So yeah,
I think that's
really fascinating.
Where it's really important that, if you are looking to establishing any partnerships out there, be very clear about what it is that you want to deliver, and how you want to deliver it. And that, it's about integrity, it's about transparency, it's about loyalty. And if you're not prepared to have that in your rear view mirror all the time, and your front mirror, then I think it becomes difficult. And I think, you can't, I certainly couldn't jump around from distributor to distributor. But I think one of the most fundamental parts of this relationship is that I don't have to do the legwork and the marketing in Japan. It's all done for us.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
By Union Works. And because of Union Works, we have got exposure in other markets. Because Union Works and Mr. Nakagawa, they're held in such high esteem. We've been in that many magazines in Japan, and we've never had to, nobody's contacted us. It's all been courtesy through Union Works and Mr. Nakagawa.
Yeah, got it. Very interesting. Now, on this point, Alex, I'm just noting down, so many learning points we're getting from this. We've spoken about your view on quality and how to handle feedback on quality and how to be open-minded about that and take it positively. We've spoken about the transparency. We've spoken about building the trust with your partner. We've spoken about having a sort of long-term vision in the decisions you make. Are there any other tips? I'm going to put you on the spot a bit now, but any other tips that you would give to companies that are looking to go into the Japanese market for the first time, if I asked you you've given us a whole bunch of tips that I've just repeated, but any other key tips that we might have missed there that you would share from your wisdom of what companies should think about?
I think before you start, you need to make some investigation into the culture of the environment you're going into, and have a real understanding and appreciation of both the domestic and the business culture out there. And without that, it becomes very difficult because it's very different from Western culture, obviously. And if you fail to make that connection, then I think you're missing the point.
Yeah.
And if you then fail in the Japanese market, it will be because of that. Because within that culture, once you start to make inroads and understanding, it becomes very clear very quickly things you can't do, things you mustn't do. And it's about what you've already said, Steve, that it's about relationships, and it should apply across the board. But there are certain peculiarities about cultures. So that would be something that I think, if I could say anything to anybody, if you are looking to going into Japan, please really understand the culture of the environment you're going into, and then also the personality of the people you're involved with. It could be that the person has a bombastic personality. Don't let that detract you from your vision. Adapt your own behavior. But that's
Great
not you
advice.
shortchanging yourself.
Of course,
you do it in daily life.
Yeah, it's relationship building, right? Yeah,
completely.
Yeah, that's
Those
just
are the
such
two critical things.
It's such amazing. Yeah, it's amazing advice, and there's no doubt that from some of the earlier points you shared with us about how you've gone about planning your business and growing your business in Japan, you've clearly learned from investigating the culture and taking on board the culture. I mean, from your perspective, would you say that most of your learning, has it come from working with Union Works and Mr. Nakagawa? Has that been your main learning source, or were there any other ways that you picked up this wider knowledge of the Japanese culture?
I think one of my sort of inherent advantages is that I'm Asian. So there was a cultural connection, if you like,
right.
so that made it slightly easier. But in the main, I would say the Union Works, Mr. Nakagawa, and the boys at Union Works, they're amazing. The guys who work at Union Works, Mashi and Mr. Hanada, and and then Hinoishi, who's a very, very dear friend of Mr. Nakagawa's, who has subsequently become an extremely dear friend and a very valuable tool for us. If we want to gauge something before we approach Mr. Nakagawa, we'll go through, we call him HH, Hinoishi, who's based in Nagano, So it's about these relationships, but you don't need 20 relationships. You should be able to count them on the fingers of your one hand.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Anything outside of that is excessive because it clutters the mind.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess the message is that those key relationships that you've identified, you've really invested in that small number of key relationships, right? Yeah. Got it.
And also
very, very
right down to when they come to the UK, having got to know Mr. Nakagawa, his personality, he's a very humble gentleman. Who's grown this amazing business, built this amazing business in Japan, and how he treats his workforce, So it's about looking at the whole picture, It's about sort of the business side of it, the commercial side of it, the pastoral side of it, So I've sort of, and every time he visits, he will bring one of his guys with him who works for him.
Wow.
As a thank you.
Yeah.
And they come and visit, and then we never put them up in a hotel. He wants to stay in a quintessential English B&B.
Oh, how lovely!
That's
great.
And then you have a local lady who's a friend, owns a 4-star B&B. He stays there, and she'll cook a meal for us specifically. She gives us the dining room, and it's like family. And that's who he is to me now. I think of him as my brother.
Yeah.
And hopefully he thinks of me as his sister.
Oh, I'm sure he does. And from everything you're telling me, I'm absolutely convinced he must do. And yeah,
and
it's
and he
amazing.
can tell me off, and I can now be open with him.
Yeah, isn't that lovely? Isn't that wonderful? Yeah. And what a great formula for your two companies to be successful in business together. When you get to that level of relationship and trust and clear amount of respect as well, and willingness to invest in each other. He made a huge decision to just come and visit you in the UK at a drop of a hat based on a 3-hour phone call. And you've made key strategic decisions not to move to working with other partners that could be more tempting. You've locked into him and shown that loyalty. Both of you have made big strategic decisions of investment in the relationship between your companies, but it's also spun over to this clear sort of friendship and personal relationship between you. And what a great formula for success. No wonder you guys are both doing so well, his company and your company. So well, listen,
I think
Alex,
without that, I think you're just going to be sort of going from distributor to distributor.
Sure, of course. Yeah. And never building that deep, substantial relationship. Yeah, it's one of the key messages that I'm getting out of this conversation, and so valuable to share this with other companies that are coming along, behind you and looking at the market. These are just golden nuggets of wisdom for other companies to get their plan right. So it's wonderful that you're sharing it. Before we wrap up,
never become complacent
sure,
about
of
the
course.
relationship.
Yeah.
If
Alex, before we wrap up, I'd like to just talk a little bit more about the future and sort of where we are today and what's coming next, because you're clearly developing Japan as a key strategic market. You've got this amazing relationship out there. So what's in store for you from this point onwards? What are your thoughts and plans about your company and your relationship in Japan?
Well, the brand is 10 years old now, and I think it's got a degree of entrenchment, brand recognition out there. Mm-hmm. And Japan's looked after us really well. Union Works have nurtured us so beautifully. And for us, the next strategic move is now to really nurture Japan and look after Japan, to repay the compliment, And with that in mind, we have made a strategic decision that we are going to be concentrating on the Japanese market in the first instance. And with that in mind, we're expanding our range. We're developing a range of small leather goods. We're looking at possibly trunk shows in the near future in Japan at Union Works. Right. We've now got on board an amazing guy, Tony Broadway, who has an incredible history as a maker from Asprey's in London, Simpsons, and now has joined us full time as well. So it's about developing new products, but keep on listening to we've just developed products. We send them to Japan and say, what do you think? Right. And then we take the lead from them.
Yeah. Yep. So that's basically how you're doing.
You mustn't be frightened. And I think fear can really stop you from doing things. And if somebody else is selling the product out there, don't be frightened. You don't have to, deal with it in a slightly different way. If there is one thing that has disappointed me about working in the UK, if I can say that, sure, is that it's been very, very difficult to collaborate with existing makers in this country. There seems to be this sense of it's a secret. Wow. And my sense is, if it's that much of a secret, it's going to die with you.
Right.
Share it.
Yes. Yeah. So you see a little bit more, too much of people protecting their territories and not being prepared to collaborate and share for the greater good of, I get you. Yeah, I understand. You have an amazing mindset.
It's a massive market, so if we've got 1% of it, so be it. There's 99% out there.
Amazing. What a great
But
outlook.
I find that within the Japanese mindset, it's very different. I have relationships with a couple of Japanese makers, and they're so eager to share their knowledge. And similarly with the gentlemen in Basel and in Switzerland, these are people at the top of their game.
Yeah.
And I share with them what knowledge I have about bridal leather,
That's wonderful. And again, it's the same as how you built that relationship with Union Works, isn't it?
Yes.
It's through sharing, investing, being prepared to, to work together on things for the greater good and see the bigger picture. So that's
Absolutely.
a very, very strong message that's come out. Okay, listen, Alex, I'm well aware of the time, and it's been an amazing discussion, and you've shared so many wonderful wisdoms with us. And I can, from hearing your story, I mean, first of all, what a lovely story it is, from where you started buying that container and finding that little card with that gentleman's name on. That is just such a beautiful start point to be at this stage where you are, sort of 10 plus years later. It's just an incredible journey. And the wisdoms you shared with us about how you've done it, it almost sounds like it just sort of fell into place for you, certainly in those early days. But I also know it doesn't work like that. It takes a lot of smart thinking and smart planning and doing the right things. And it's very clear from talking to you that you've learned that, and you've done the right things, and you're continuing to do the right things. And so I'm not at all surprised at your success in Japan, and I'm sure it will be ongoing with these new products you're developing and your plans for the future. And I'm a big fan of what you do, Alex, and it's been a great pleasure having you. So thank you so much for taking time out to share your thoughts with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Not at all. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to do so. And I'll carry on taking my lead from my most amazing distributor, Mr. Nakagawa.
Good. And I'll just wrap up by, for everyone listening in on this podcast, wherever you're listening in, I hope that's been an enjoyable discussion. I think we've picked up some great wisdoms and some incredible golden nuggets from Alex that we can all learn from. And as I said at the start, if you wouldn't mind hitting the subscribe button and the like button, that would really help us. And there will be more great podcasts with more fascinating guests like Alex coming along. So hope you've enjoyed it, everybody at home. And Alex, thank you once again for your time today. Thank you.
And similarly, thank you again to you.